Heather Smith and welcome to Cloud Stories, a podcast exploring the accounting and business apps community. I have a real treat for you today. My good friend Cassandra Scott, the Director of Laurus Bookkeeping, joined me today on the Cloud Stories podcast. Based in Brisbane, Cassandra is a Registered BAS Agent, a Xero Certified Advisor, a Xero Platinum Partner, a mentor of other bookkeepers, and a Director at the Australian Bookkeepers Association. She recently gave a heartwarming speech about the importance of the accounting and bookkeeping community over the last 2 years, particularly over the last 2 years at the Brisbane Roadshow. So what I'm initially going to do is I'm going to share her speech with you. And then after that, I am going to go straight into our interview where we're going to talk about technology, community and leadership in the bookkeeping industry. Before I pass over to Cassandra's talk, let me get through some of the housekeeping. So please stay up to date with the curated content I'm sharing by signing up for the Accounting Apps newsletter available at heathersmithau.com. Read about how I strategically partner with apps at endorsementdisclosure.com. I'll also organise to have this episode published on the EarMark CPE App. So if you register on the EarMark CPE App, you can listen and do the questions there and earn 1 hour of verifiable CPE simply for listening to this episode and doing the questions. Now, over to Cassandra's talk.
So, COVID. Some days I sat frozen at my desk, not able to get any forward momentum. Looking at a screen, not answering the phone, not responding to emails, not knowing which way to turn. Anxiety levels were off the charts and it was bloody tough. I'm sure you can all resonate with that. I couldn't comprehend what was actually going on. As a business owner, not just as a bookkeeper, but as a business owner, I wondered what the heck was in store for us all. Some days I actually just sat there and cried. I still get quite emotional when I say these words. At times, all I could physically and mentally manage to do was actually get up and walk away. Go outside, have a cup of tea, sit on the deck, read a book, just completely disengage from the world. Phone rang, emails went unanswered. Ultimately, though, I still had a business to run and I still had clients that I needed to support. In March 2020, our worlds were turned upside down. It was a global pandemic and nobody really had considered this as part of their business continuity plan. Hands up anybody that had pandemic in their business succession or continuity plan. Any of your clients have it? None of mine did either. As accounting and bookkeeping practitioners, our clients were turning to us to answer these questions and their questions. Questions that had never been asked of us before in a business and a political and an economic environment that was changing on a daily basis. Google, Siri, Alexa, none of them actually had these answers. While our clients were relying on us to give them the answers to the questions, we as business owners ourselves were asking and needing answers to the same things. So it wasn't just our clients that needed this information, it was us as the business owners. It was a steep learning curve for everyone, and our industries, the bookkeeping and tax accounting industries, or the accounting industries, were at the forefront and the receiving end of all of it. It's the people in this room that actually helped me survive and endure through what have been two of the most challenging years in our and your business lives. If there's a legacy to be had from 2020 and 2021, it's been the evolution of the bookkeeping and the accounting community. The strength, the diversity, the camaraderie and the resilience that has evolved. It's the people in this room. Fundamentally, we had to be there for our community and our community had to be there for us in our and their and your most vulnerable times. Our community strengthened, it became resilient. Accounting and bookkeeping professionals started working more collaboratively and with a really, really tight community focus. We leveraged off of each other's strengths and we learned every single day. I know certainly when everything was kicking off in 2020, what you learned in the morning had potentially changed by the afternoon. So it was just this continuously evolving, trying to grasp this moving, stage of knowledge. The legacy of these relationships is still with us, and we've seen our businesses change and adapt in the way that we operate. But where do we go from here? So the COVID pandemic is now moving behind us. We're moving forward. So where do we go from here? What have we found? Clients who previously thought that they could only survive with on-site support are now seeing the value of technology as a big enabler within their businesses. The laggards are starting to move forward. There's a greater acceptance and understanding of the automation, which opens up opportunities for bookkeepers and accountants moving forward. We talk about advisory, and it's often just seen to be in the realm of the accounting businesses, but bookkeepers, let me tell you, there is so much opportunity out there for you. Our businesses are capable of operating nationally and internationally too. We've now got no borders around where we can work, and we can develop strength and skills around higher level advisory. The routine work is or should be automated where possible, leveraging off of the technology that is now available to us today. If you're not leveraging off of technology, think about how you can bring that into your practice. We've become less tolerant, though, of businesses who do not appreciate the value that we bring to them in the services that we offer. And we are choosing not to accept the bad behaviours of the past. I've had numerous conversations with both bookkeepers and accountants who are actually drawing really solid lines in the ground about the behaviours of their clients. We are appreciating the value of quality clients and of the quality work that goes with it, and the value that we can deliver back to our clients as practitioners. So where can we grow? What can we do? It doesn't have to be complex. It can be as simple as cash flow and budgeting. The cheapest client to acquire and provide additional services to is the client that you're already working with. Start to open up conversations with your clients around cash flow and budgeting, management reporting. These are all skill sets that we as bookkeepers actually do have and have the capacity to deliver to our clients. You've seen the fabulous tools that Xero's been talking about with analytics and projects, the enhancements to the reporting and what you can do with that. This is information that has value, and we have value to our clients in translating that for them. Change management. There's a greater reliance on the advisor with everything that's happening at the moment with SDP2 and superannuation, just to name a two. Budgets and grants. You know, how many of us were actually at the forefront of providing these services to our clients at very, very short notice throughout the pandemic over the last 2 years? That's a skill set that has value, and it's a service to our clients that holds intrinsic value in what we do. Payroll compliance. The payroll environment, as we know, is getting far more complex on a day-to-day basis. So this is an area that bookkeepers and accountants can step into and provide high-level support and services to their clients. So there is a huge future and opportunity out there for all of us. The thing to remember is that these days, and I think COVID really did demonstrate that, is that everything we do can leverage really successfully off of technology without losing the human connection. We maintained really strong human connections through the year, and Carla and Amar from Mad Wealth, I saw the evolution of their business occur over the last 2 years, and their story is absolutely fabulous. So if you haven't actually seen it, I think there's some collateral out around it. I really encourage you to read it because they are a fabulous story. But tech enables us to, work anywhere at any time with our clients in any location, and it's cost effective. So COVID for me has been a really tough 2 years. I know a lot of you in the room here, and I sort of sit in a lot of public-facing forums, and it might seem easy, but the reality is that under all of that, there's lots of feet scrambling, and everybody in a business has been impacted. And I take my hand off to the people in this room for supporting your clients so effectively through this time. So thank you.
Hello, Cassandra. Thank you so much for joining us on the Cloud Stories podcast today. Really looking forward to speaking with you and sharing your story with the community.
Thanks very much for having me, Heather. Looking forward to it.
So you and I have known each other for quite a long time now, but can you, for the people who are listening in, can you share a little bit about your world, just a little bit about your world before you became a bookkeeper?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So before I became a bookkeeper, I basically went straight into admin office work from the day I left school. And in hindsight, realised that in the very first job I had, I was bookkeeping without knowing it. And ironically, that what I was doing there were the fundamentals of everything I still do today. But it was all being done in the ledger book, sales ledgers and purchase ledgers and reconciliation ledgers and all of those sorts of things. So I've always worked in admin, finance, business operations, those sorts of things. Ironically, I left school and my plan was not to work in an office and not to learn how to type. So the irony and the naivety of youth, I think, is really the interesting thing there. So from there, just worked across small business for years and years in really diverse roles, everything from manufacturing to wholesaling to jewelry manufacturing to construction projects. I ended up working for 10 years for the Department of Defence as a public service in finance, administration, management roles. And the interesting thing about working for somebody like Defence is you're actually working for a number of different business types under one umbrella organisation. So I worked in procurement, spare parts, IT systems, logistics, managed one of their health facilities, training, international languages, a really, really diverse range of businesses or sub-businesses, if you want a better word, within the one organisation. So that gave me some really, really broad-based experience, which I've been able to bring to what I do on a daily basis. Managing fairly large construction contracts, $50-odd million construction contracts, and managing the finances and admin on those. So it was really interesting. At one stage, I did actually work in there for an accounting practice as their practice manager. And I was actually told when I was working in there that bookkeeping was very, very highly specialised and not necessarily something that I'd be able to handle. And I would actually love these days to go back to the people that I worked with and say, yeah, guess what, guys? So that was always a really, really funny conversation. But, once Defence was the last sort of almost real world job I had. I left Defence after 10 years and literally went home and sat on the couch for 6 months and sucked my thumb before I started to get back out into it. I was planning on being a little bit of a stay-at-home mum and, doing the coffee mornings with the girls, but ended up getting a little part-time job with a training company not far from where we were living at that stage, just doing their bookkeeping and general office admin. So I've probably, compared to a lot of people, a fairly non-traditional type path, I think, into bookkeeping, and never really stepped into it with the intention of doing it. It was, still don't know what I really want to do when I grow up. So that's where we're at now.
I think it's really interesting for people to hear the background and especially people who may be listening in and be at a time in transitioning in their life and saying, okay, we can have a diverse background, and we can use all of that experience to actually become a bookkeeper. And also the feedback as we go along the way. We really have to maybe listen to it, but maybe put it in a box that it deserves to be in when people suggest you're not capable of it. I remember being told I was not capable of teaching MYOB software solution. And I was like, yeah. I think I probably am. But anyhow, you deal with that, and I guess you face those people in your world.
You do, and I think history shapes what you do. And I still today, when I sit back and think about it, look at how I've drawn on those experiences over the years to actually apply to businesses that I work with today. So it is interesting there.
Yeah, absolutely. So when did you first become aware of the bookkeeping industry and think about sort of pursuing it as a profession?
To be honest, it wasn't actually until after I started my little business that I even realised that there was an industry and a profession out there. So I fell into the industry more so than anything actively pursuing it. I was working for the training company, and some friends of the people that I was working with said, "Oh, I hear you've sorted out their books really, really well. Would you come and do some book work for me?" And it was like, "Oh yeah, for sure, not a problem, I can do that." I was only working 2 days a week, so it was just an extra few hours a week that I was going to be able to do something. And then that was one set of friends, and then somebody else asked me as well, and I thought, oh, well, I need to get a little bit more serious about this. And they said to me, "How much do you charge?" And I went, $35 an hour. I had no idea, absolutely oblivious to what was going on out there. But basically, once I started working with clients, I actually realised at that point in time that I knew absolutely nothing about what I was doing in a professional bookkeeping context. And that's when I started to reach out and try and find resources out there to support me in the services I was providing. I've always been a learner in, if I don't know it, I'll find the answers. So that's where I started reaching out to try and find solutions. That's where I came across the Australian Bookkeepers Network. And that's when I realised that this sort of little side gig that I was doing had legs, and there was a big industry out there that could be stepped into. So it was by pure chance more so than anything strategically planned.
Yeah. By chance and strategically planned. Thank you for sharing that. And look, I imagine the ABN potentially hadn't been around all that long when you found it. But maybe it had been.
They were in, I think they'd been around for a couple of years. So I look back, and I'm still a member today. And I'm member, I think, 245 or something like that. So I was one of their early cohorts of membership. And at that stage, there weren't a lot of options for support and assistance around. And I stumbled across them and have just been brilliant. And they've been instrumental in the learning curve that I jumped on, and it was a very steep one and a very hard one, but they've been instrumental in my ability to succeed.
That's excellent that we have these professions who are able to support the bookkeeping community.
Yeah.
So, Cassandra, you've been an early adopter of technology in practice. Can you share with me a little about what the tech stack looks like in your business? And I'm keen to know, what's your favourite tool? What's the tool that you think people need to know about? And what was maybe the last tool that you implemented?
Yeah. So our tech stack, I think when we're looking at technology in our business, one of the things that's key for me is its integration with our two core systems that we use. So and I'm well known out there for being heavily involved in Xero, and we use Xero and the Xero Practice Suite as our core platform for client-facing work. From an internal business operations perspective, we have chosen Office 365 as the platform that we want to utilise for the business side of things. So when we're looking at technology, it has to support one of those two platforms, or has to integrate with one of those two platforms. If for whatever reason it doesn't integrate with either of those platforms, it's sort of got to be a real magic unicorn. It's got to do something pretty special for us to really consider bringing it in and utilising it as part of our practice. So, yes, I said we leverage off of Xero and the Xero Practice platform. So that's Xero Ask, Xero HQ, Xero Practice Manager, and Xero Tax. Office 365 for our day-to-day ops, email. Microsoft Teams is just brilliant. We've really, really started to dive into that over the last few years. And I guess one of the really interesting things from my perspective about Office 365 is its evolution over, we've been using it since it was Microsoft, goodness knows what, Windows 11 or whatever those crazy versions were. And it had some deficiencies, but over the last 5 years, I think they've really solidified the product and its offering to market, and it's made it a really easy choice for us for day-to-day utilisation. So we still have some legacy systems that we chose to use because 365 or Microsoft didn't support us well or was cost prohibitive in the early days. But we are looking at sort of transitioning more fully to the 365 platform. So what do we like to use? Teams, internal communications is just gold. My staff are dispersed at different locations. They work out of their own home bases. We're now connecting and communicating with clients through Teams. I'm working with other bookkeepers heavily through Teams and supporting their businesses as well. So it's a really great communications platform. Zoom we still do use, but whether or not we start to transition away from that is still to be decided. Sometimes I do sit in I'm really comfortable with that and I don't want to change. But then part of me says, well, hang on, no, I need to look at what is progressive in terms of what we're doing. We utilise a product called Freshdesk, and you asked me about my favourite tool, and I would have to say that is probably, aside from Xero and Teams as our business ops products, Freshdesk would have to be my favourite tool. We stumbled across that. It was actually recommended to me by another bookkeeper in the industry. And my biggest dilemma was managing email and email congestion. And being very much, if it hits my email account, then I'm the person that needed to be able to deal with it and respond to it and solve it. It was just becoming completely inundated, missing deadlines, letting clients down, letting ourselves down in that regard. So Freshdesk for us is a ticketing system, and I know the day that I set it up, I think I threw 60 emails straight into Freshdesk and was able to delegate those out directly to my staff. And that has just been an absolute game changer from my perspective, because the staff now hold a greater ownership around the relationship with the clients. It doesn't diminish my role in that, but it actually empowers the staff to take a lead in a much stronger client relationship, because they're dealing with the nitty-gritty on a day-to-day basis from a communications perspective.
Excellent. I'm sure that will be a solution that people will go and have a look at, because I know that I've seen you talk about it quite a bit. And it's nice when you have those things that can just give you back capacity. And it sounds like even day one, bam.
And it's about the functionality, not necessarily the product. So there's a number of similar products out in the market that work on a ticketing basis. And they're all, from what I understand, brilliant. And this is just the one that we've landed on. So it's great. It's about what it solves as opposed to the product itself.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. One of the for dummies strategies is only tell them about one thing, tell them one route, which is tell them ticketing solution, and let them explore, and which is exactly what you've done. And hopefully people are listening in and think, okay, maybe that's the next thing I need to find out there.
Yeah. And you asked about the latest product that we've implemented. It would probably be Expert. Was probably about the latest one. So we were early inquirers about Expert, but later adopters, and not for any particular reason, rather than, yep, I'll get to it, yep, I'll get to it, yep, I'll get to it. So it was about sort of committing the time and the resource to actually jump on board with it in a serious manner for our client base, and start to leverage off of that. So really liking the organisational visibility that we get through it. And I think for me, one of the things that I love about Expert, it's actually been built and designed, and it's evolving around the bookkeeping industry. So a lot of the challenges that we often have with some software is that it's been developed and evolved around the accounting industry. And whilst we've got a lot of similarities in the way that we work and the way that we operate, there's a lot of areas where we're very dissimilar. And Expert, I think, has taken that uniqueness around what we do and really started to develop a great product around it that answers the questions that we deal with on a day-to-day basis in terms of our client data and the work we do for our clients. So it's a lot more granular. It's down in the weeds. It's not the higher level strategic information. It's the day-to-day stuff, which is where we're working with our clients on a daily basis.
Mm. And they seem to really be, the team who are based out of Coffs Harbour, seem to be really actively listening to the community and bringing that feedback into the solution and producing it.
Yeah. I've had some really great conversations with Troy and the team, and they are absolutely proactive in listening. And, even if it's something that's really sort of insignificant and minuscule, they take it on board and they go, well, hang on, we understand what the complexity of that is and why that's causing you grief. Let's see if we can develop a solution around that. And it's like, oh, thank you, that would be fabulous. And often the problems that they're solving, that we're identifying, that we're asking them to solve, aren't just routine day-to-day things. They're often issues that have come up through integrations with other systems into the Xero platform. So it could be an add-on that's causing a problem in Xero, but we can't identify it, or we don't identify it until it gets to a bigger problem stage, and experts are able to sort of come in and sit under that and identify it much earlier in the life cycle, I guess, of the work that we're doing with the clients.
Absolutely. And I guess every time they create a new expert or one of the boards for someone like you who's raised that issue, all of a sudden everyone else has that in front of them as well, and potentially is identifying an issue they had no idea to even look to or look for.
Yeah, look, I think that's probably a reasonable perspective on that, Heather. It's the classic, you don't know what you don't know, and that sometimes will bring that to the fore for people, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I wanted to touch on, just because I've actually been speaking to Stella Sola, who heads up AI at the CSIRO Institute, and she and I were talking about, with these programs, well, Expert very much uses AI. With the Microsoft Office 365 program, sometimes, and you probably are doing this, but sometimes you actually have to go in and make sure all the AI options are turned on, so it's actually doing the smart thinking for you. So for people listening in, that's worth having a look at, because I know I use G Suite or Google Suite, and I had to go and turn a few of them on. I didn't realize I hadn't activated them, and I can see sort of weeks later the difference it makes and the speed that the work actually happens at because of that.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think, I've used Outlook, for instance, since forever in my business, and even prior to my business. So it's something I've got a natural affinity for. But the evolution has been really, really significant. And I know that I don't even tap into half of what its capabilities are. So I think it's really, really interesting. And I'm always keen to hear and find out what and how people are using the same sorts of tools that I'm using. Because again, it comes back to the whole concept, you don't know what you don't know. And it's about this sort of continuous learning cycle around everything that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And trying to tap into that. So I understand you and your business also assist your clients in implementing technology. So what have been some of the successful strategies that you've adopted to introduce clients to new workflow methods and technology solutions?
Yeah, so one of the things I think part of that is making sure that we've got existing strong relationships with our clients, so that when we work with our clients in the first instance, we make sure that they know that we're focused on outcomes around them and around their business interests. That's at the forefront of what we actually do, so that when we start to have conversations with clients around technology solutions, we're not going in to replicate necessarily a process or a system that they've already got. We're looking at how can we leverage off of technology to improve their outcomes, or get us to those outcomes in a more effective way, or in a more streamlined way, or in a way that will provide additional clarity, or will it free up time that will allow either the business owner or ourselves to do something else at a more strategic level within the business. There's been a client I worked with a number of years who we went in and they had a project management system that was costing them $20,000 a year, I think, to run. And by their own admission, they said that they weren't using it well. but they weren't using it well, they said, because some of the functionality that they wanted and the information they wanted couldn't be extracted from it, and it was very labour intensive to get into. And because of that, they were actually supplementing all of their data entry into their project management system with spreadsheets. So they were entering data. I think we worked out there was 8 separate spreadsheets that a single piece of data was being entered into to get them the information they needed. So we went in and we had a conversation about, okay, well, what are the outcomes? What do you need? What are you looking for? And then once we had clarity around that, we were then able to look at the efficiencies and the pathways that we could implement to get to those outcomes. And, you know, the transition was from MYOB plus their accounting platform, their project management platform, across to Xero and Workflow Max. And in that process, we got rid of 8 spreadsheets. We got rid of a $20,000 system that wasn't being used well. Their staff were encouraged and got on board with the uptake of the system. And I think the key was also the principals of the practice or the business were also on board with it. So, you know, focusing on the relationships, focusing on the outcomes, but also understanding who the critical decision makers and the people that need to influence that change within the business actually are.
That's such a great case study and story there. So thank you for sharing that. And for people listening in, what I want to maybe highlight here is when you went into that discussion with them, can I be correct in saying that you didn't have all the answers at that point?
Oh, absolutely not. We had no idea what we were going to do or what we were going to find in the first instance. And this is where, if, you know, I go back to the businesses and the work I did pre my bookkeeping life, is I was able to draw on a lot of the skills and experiences I'd had in these other environments to come into this particular business and go, okay, here's the starting point, here's the end point, what's the pathway between the two? And their pathway was up and down and convoluted, and it, you know, segued off in 3 different directions and eventually did come back. So what I was able to do once I understood what their outcomes were was to start to just sort of put that information on a straight or a slightly windy road, as opposed to everything that sort of diverged off into different areas. So it was an exercise. I spent a couple of days with them, actually, literally just following their staff around, making notes about what they were doing, asking them why they were doing it. And one of the interesting responses is, well, why are you doing that? Well, it's because we've always done it. My next question to that is always, yes, I know you might have always done it that way, but what does it do for you? What are you getting out of this? What is it achieving? What is it informing? And really diving deep into those sorts of questions, because just because you've always done it that way, at the end of the day, once you analyse what you've been doing and why you've been doing it, you often find it's completely redundant in the process. Mm-hmm. And that's what we started to unravel and identify as we, you know, stepped through all of their workflows and processes, that they built these sort of redundancies into the system because this project management system didn't work correctly. So once we identified what their outcomes were, we were able to sort of reverse engineer it and provide a recommendation for solutions.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. And so for people listening in, I think that the detail-orientated people, the bookkeepers, sometimes the management accountants, really have a strong ability to do this. And it starts with asking a lot of questions and building that workflow out. And you may not have any solution at the end when you first go in, but you're in a lot better position to have that conversation with them and help them unpack their situation. So don't put it necessarily in the too hard box. Give it a go. And the first one might be really challenging, but as you do more and more of them, if you like them, it's interesting, fun work, and you can massive outcomes from it.
It is great, fun work. I think one of the keys there too, Heather, is that when you go to a client or you're developing a relationship with a client around this sort of a deliverable, it's okay to say to the client, look, I actually don't know. And I think you'll find that the clients will respect you more if you can be honest about what your knowledge gap is at times and how you're going to overcome that knowledge gap. So if you don't know, that's great. The follow-up to say, look, I don't know, but give me a couple of hours and I'll try and find out for you. And then you madly come away and Google like crazy. Or reach out to your networks. But saying you don't know isn't a problem at all. I think the clients really respect that level of candor and honesty.
Yeah. You don't know the solution or the outcome, but you still have the skills there to assist them. So please charge for your time if you are doing this. Charge for your time.
And look, we made the same mistake. We do these things because we thought it was the preparation work that we couldn't charge for. But over the years, I've realised that there is incredible value in that scoping exercise. And I think once you realise that, you actually provide a better outcome both for the client as well, because you don't have that resistance to not charging for this, or gosh, I don't want to spend too much time on it. So you allow yourself the time and charge for it accordingly.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on to talking about the software vendors, what advice do you have for the technology companies who are listening in who want to partner with the bookkeeping community?
Make it easy. Have clarity around your offering to the market. Have clarity around how it's going to help the bookkeeper in practice or our clients. Don't give me some highfalutin sales pitch or a website that really doesn't tell me what you do and requires me to book a call in with a sales rep in 3 weeks' time for a half an hour pre-recorded webinar that really doesn't answer any of my questions and does nothing more than parrot stuff that's already on your website. So, time is precious. Make it meaningful. Understand our industry. Understand what our challenges are. Understand what we're trying to solve either for ourselves or for and on behalf of our clients. And understand too that the bookkeeping industry is different to the accounting industry. So we've got a lot of similarities. We do a lot of things. Our clients are common. We share clients, and we've both got the client-centric focus around what we do. But the relationships that we have with the clients are actually very, very different. A lot of bookkeepers are much more closely aligned and working with their clients than the accountants do. The accountants have got brilliantly strong relationships with their clients, but from a very different perspective. And that's not a bad thing. That's a really, really good thing. So I encourage the vendors to understand what our relationship is with our clients, not just what the accountant's relationship is with the clients and how we may go in and solve problems. I'd like the vendors to think about considering pricing strategies for bookkeepers. One of the biggest challenges I've often found is that the pricing is bundled on a per user type or a bundled user basis. So if you look at the makeup of a lot of bookkeeping practices, most of them are sole operators or with very, small staffing numbers. So starting off at a 10 or a 20 staff member access is just at some really crazy price, is really just never, ever going to work. It's not going to be economical for the practice to invest in that, no matter how good your product is. So think about your pricing strategies as well for your bookkeeping practices or your accounting practices. And I don't want to just sort of knock the accounting practices out. There are many smaller accounting practices that are actually being faced with those same challenges around pricing, in that the price bundles are too high for the small needs that they have. But understand that we've got a really strong pathway to the client. So just because we don't have a large number of staff doesn't mean we're not touching base with a large number of clients who we can influence to utilise your products. And probably the third factor for me is trials. If you're offering a trial on your product, I like to get in and I want to try and break it. I want to apply my thought processes to it. I want to see what it does and, often put the curly stuff in as well. A 7-day trial to me is absolutely useless because, let's be honest, most of us do this sort of research after hours or on weekends. A number of firms do have dedicated time, but the reality is a large percentage of us choose to do it at odd times. If I've sat on a Saturday or a Sunday afternoon and set up a trial, done a bit of a playing around with it this weekend, and then want to jump back in next weekend to follow it through and dive any deeper into it. If you've given me a 7-day trial, that's gone. It's done and dusted. It's just not useful to me to understand your product. So, make it easy. Look at your pricing strategies and consider trials. And don't make it just a half-baked trial either with, oh, no, you need to pay to get this feature. Give us a taste of everything that you've got available for, I would say, 30 days if you could, please.
Yep. Yes, 30 days has been the trial length I've been pushing for constantly. Absolutely needs to be that length of time. And you raised some really good points. So hopefully everyone listened into that, and it's something we can refer back to in that important relationship with our vendors. So my next question, I suspect, came from a massive discussion that was happening in one of the forums that we were involved in. So, Cassandra, what is your opinion on referral fees? So when I use the term referral fees, I use it as an umbrella to capture all the ways a bookkeeper could financially profit from recommending a software solution to the client. That could be revenue share, a one-off fee. It could be a way that the software is selling to the accountants at a wholesale discount, enabling them to make a margin on it, etc. So what's your opinion on those sorts of referral fees using that umbrella terminology?
I'd probably define that terminology just a little bit more differently, I think, Heather, in that, if we look at the products like Xero, MYOB, QBO, the accounting products that are being used on a day-to-day basis, they're often offered to practitioners on a wholesale type basis. So the product is readily available to the SME if they want to sign up and subscribe to it directly. But as partners or accountants, bookkeepers, we have the opportunity to access the subscriptions at a wholesale price, and then we are encouraged to resell that to the business owner at its retail price. I think that's slightly different, and I sort of don't want to split hairs here, but I do think it's slightly different from referral fees, where we're encouraging the client to go to a particular vendor and then get a clip of the fee that the client is paying to the vendor, or it's a non-wholesale type arrangement. So I don't think I personally don't have any concerns about these types of arrangements. I think it comes down to the concept of ethics within business. And, I'm 100% Xero practice, and I have people approaching me all of the times to move from another accounting platform to the Xero platform. But I always sit down and assess the client's actual needs and what the catalyst is for them to make those sorts of changes. So why are you going to Xero? Why are you leaving this product and coming over? Oh, my existing product doesn't do A, B, C, and D. Okay, tell me a little bit more about your business. Does your business do this, 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 and this? And there's been times where I've said to the client, you actually shouldn't move. Xero is not going to be the best solution for you. You're going to lose this sort of functionality. So I think when we're talking about referral fees, we've got to be doing it from a very ethical perspective. Any other business that you work for, you go into Woolworths, they're selling you an apple or a lettuce these days at a retail price, but they're making a margin on it. I don't think there's much difference when we're selling the software to the client, we're making a margin. So that's the commission side of things. I think it's a little bit more ambiguous sometimes when we're talking about the clip on the, the more you sell, the bigger your clip is on the fee that the client is paying directly. And what that also tends to remove is the ability for the accountant or bookkeeper to build the cost of that into their pricing and provide the client with a sort of a holistic solution to what they need. I've probably seen a little bit more dirtier stuff around sort of direct referral fees where there's not a lot of transparency around it. And that certainly does concern me. But if you're looking at the commissions, for instance, at the bigger software products, they're very, very transparent around what those arrangements are. And again, we have a requirement to disclose a formal relationship to our clients. And to be honest, most of our clients really don't care that we're getting a wholesale price, because what they're focused on is the outcomes that we're providing to their business.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much for articulating that and sharing your thoughts on that, Cassandra. Really appreciate it. So moving to talk about community. So for our listeners, can you describe the community that you, I believe, founded and moderate, called Bookkeepers in Practice Australia community?
Yeah, thanks, Heather. So it's a Facebook group called Bookkeepers in Practice Australia. It was established, I think, roughly about 2016. And its genesis came about because there were a number of different forums, whether they be business forums or, tradies forums or, all of these Facebook pages that were popping up left, right and centre. And there were lots of people starting to ask questions about bookkeeping and the technical side of things. And I know myself, when I first started business, and I mentioned ABN earlier, that, I was on this steep learning curve trying to find out everything about everything. And what I realised is that there wasn't a lot of high quality information that was out there. A lot of it was being responded to by people who weren't necessarily registered BAS or tax agents. It might have been a business owner who, old mate down the pub had actually given them a bit of advice and it was a bit dodgy, but hey, that's the way you should do it. It was there wasn't a great deal of quality around it. So I made the decision to set up a community where we could facilitate quality information, resourced information to the membership. I chose to restrict it to bookkeepers in practice. And again, a lot of this is back to the value that bookkeepers in practice provide back to businesses. So I didn't want it to be a place where, mum and dad business could come in and ask questions, and by getting the answer to that question would actually remove their need to engage with a formal service provider. So I didn't want it to be a free-for-all knowledge transfer to non-bookkeepers. It was about transfer of knowledge within the bookkeeping community. And that's how it evolved. And we set it up and the traction has been amazing. I think, we've got over 2,000 members in there now. It peaks and troughs in terms of activity. At times of the year change the tempo of activity that's in there. But one of the things we recognise is the provision of high quality advice. And what it's unearthed is there are a huge number of people out there that have huge amounts of knowledge in sometimes really, really niche and specialised areas. And that's gold. And it's so collaborative as well. So it's not I told you this last week, you should know it by now. It's actually a really collaborative, sharing environment where people can be vulnerable and say, well, actually, I don't know this. I've not experienced before. It's been years since I've dealt with it. I think it could be this. Could somebody please help me out? And then, today that person's asking the question and getting the solution, but in 3 weeks' time, it could flip completely. And because of that person's knowledge, they could be the person providing the solution or the commentary. So, it's open to all bookkeepers who own a practice. And when I say own a practice, that's sole traders. You don't need to be registered BAS agents. If you're operating a bookkeeping business, you're more than welcome to join. We sort of support and encourage the BAS agent pathway. It's not open to accountants, and we haven't done that to be divisive. It's just, again, that the bookkeeping questions and the bookkeeping community has a different focus with our clients. We do have some accountants in there, that said, who also have bookkeeping practices. So there's sort of a little bit of a caveat on the, yes, you can come in, but because you've got the bookkeeping practice. But yeah, it's a really lovely environment. And the first couple of years I was really intensive and hands-on, but over that time, it's become quite organic in it's the way it works. There are a lot of other people now that step in and provide really high quality and qualified support and advice.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Love the high quality level. It must be probably one of the highest quality levels in terms of that bookkeeping group in Australia, and definitely one if you are listening in and a bookkeeper in Australia, falling under all the criteria that Cass spelled out there. Go and have a look and join that group, because it can just, it's as well as being a safe space, as well as having the interesting conversations that you want to have around bookkeeping. There's so much knowledge sharing, and go in and contribute where you can, and lap it up and just scroll through and read. I frequently jump into groups and just read how people have solved issues that I have, so I don't even need to ask the question, because it's already been solved before. But that's the great thing, is just this knowledge base. It's a shame it doesn't give us a nice way to recreate it into a sort of a Wikipedia, a wiki resource of all these solutions that have come out of it.
Yeah. One of the things I like about it is it's software agnostic. So we've been very purposeful about making it software agnostic. So we don't allow software vendors in there. So the commentary around those sorts of products is not compromised by bias from a particular vendor themselves. And we were very strategic about that. And the other thing that we have welcomed, though, into the group that is sort of non-bookkeepers are representatives from all of the professional associations. So one of the things that we strongly encourage is any bookkeeper should hold a membership with a professional association. I think there's incredible value in that. And for anybody that doesn't have a membership and is in the industry, I would really encourage you to look at one of those associations, because the support that they can provide you is absolutely gold. So we do allow the professional associations in there, because it is about raising ultimately the professionalism of our industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Raising standards, raising knowledge, raise your prices.
Yep.
That could be the new logo.
I like that.
So to talk about, in terms of community, you've provided this really safe and supportive and nurtured community. We've gone through terrible lockdowns and challenges through the pandemic, which is ongoing. Have the changes, the impact of that been positive or negative for the bookkeeping community?
Look, I think there's been both positive and negative impacts of COVID. So I think sadly, on a negative perspective, there are people that have chosen to walk away from the industry after what we've been through in the last 12 years. And I don't think we've actually seen the end of the exodus yet. I have people contact me regularly who say, I want to sell my practice. I've decided I just can't do this anymore. I need to walk away. And that's really sad, but I commend those people that are making those decisions. That's actually a really, really courageous decision to make. And we talk a lot about, mental health and well-being, and it's fabulous to see that people are making the decisions that are actually going to be best for them. It's unfortunate for the industry that we're losing some really, really highly skilled and experienced people, but all kudos to them for having the courage to make those decisions. I think they should be really, really proud of that. I think one of the other negatives during this time is there was a lot of work that was done that wasn't actually charged for. And I must admit, I used to get a little bit frustrated when, community was talking about this. And it's like, oh, these poor businesses are in such distress and, everybody's really stressed out and I haven't charged for it. To a certain extent, I think some of that is actually responsible for some of the people leaving the industry, because they themselves then got put in these really, really high pressure situations where they weren't getting the income that they needed to sustain their business, or things were really, really tight. So whilst that pressure was being applied, I think it's also set a certain bar for some clients that, oh, well, you didn't charge me for that last time. Why are you now charging me now? So it's changed clients' expectations that, you can do this at short notice and for free. Why do I need to pay for it? And the immediacy too. So, during COVID, and particularly around all of the stimulus and support packages there, we were punching stuff out really, really quickly. There were short time frames, and, you know, I know a lot of our community was working just insane hours to support their clients with what was needed. So clients were seeing stuff coming out, oh, wow, they've done this so quickly for me, which is great. And what the clients are now doing is saying, well, why can't you respond on today in exactly the same timelines as you were previously? So I think that's for me, that's a little bit of a negative about, you know, some of the stuff that's come out of the last 2 years. On the positive side, though, I think there's been a strengthening in the way that we start to set boundaries with our clients. And I know for myself, I've become probably a bit of a hard-nosed, grumpy old cow some days. And I've just gone, no, we can't do it. And, you know, where I used to stress heavily over clients meeting compliance deadlines, if the client hasn't got the paperwork to me by the time they need to get it to me, if it's late, that's actually not my problem. And you're not going to compromise my time because you couldn't get your poo in a pile, basically. So I think a lot of the bookkeeping community is starting to set firmer boundaries with clients. As I, you know, used to say to my daughter, and I'll soon be saying to my granddaughter, I'm sure, no is actually a complete sentence, and it can't happen. You know, even the last couple of weeks with the crazy lead up to end of financial year, I've just been saying to people that have approached me, no, I'm sorry, I can't assist you. The earliest I can do this is in this time frame, take it or leave it. So yeah, boundaries are really important. I think there's been a greater appreciation too of the value that we can contribute to clients. So I think clients have started to realise that we do a little bit more than just key numbers into the software and, you know, process a payroll and submit a BAS. I think they realise that we actually have a really deep understanding about what's going on in their businesses and the nuances of their businesses. So they're coming to us now for, I think, it's been a combination of clients are appreciating more about what we do, but the pressures that were put on them during the pandemic meant they also need to be a lot more aware. So they're coming to us for more strategic information. Cash flow and budgeting is just skyrocketing at the moment. Clients realising that they actually need that sort of information to have effective businesses. And for me, one of the gold positives out of this has been a stronger collaboration between the accounting and the bookkeeping community. You know, I think historically there've been some really big barriers between those two disciplines working more closely together, and there shouldn't be, because at the end of the day we're working with the one client. And we both provide very different things to the client that are very, very complementary, though, to what we each do. But that's one of the things that I saw during COVID was this strengthening of the accounting and the bookkeeping community as a whole. And it's really nice to see that that's continuing as well. And it's now starting to gain its own momentum and its own, you know, you're talking about community and social media pages. It's gaining its own momentum in those environments. And that can only be a good thing for our clients and our industry as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree with you on that. And I thank you for sharing with us. It was challenging watching the community not charging for things, and I was very involved with the Chartered Accountants Association, and I saw staff members publicly saying you shouldn't be charging, and it was very challenging to then have. I then had Chartered Accountants say to me they hadn't charged for a full month. And very, very challenging for everyone. So, and I just trying to help as much. And you did such a great job in pulling people back and saying, no, the legislation hasn't dropped yet. Refer to the legislation. The
ever revolving door of changing legislation. That was great.
If you had $1 for every time you said refer to the legislation, you'd be a wealthy, wealthy woman.
I would be. I would be, but I'm not as broke as I could have been because I did charge for the work we did. So there we go.
As you should have done. And those boundaries, they're so important, those boundaries. And
they are. And we have value in what we do. And we've got to continue to appreciate the value that we provide to our clients and not diminish it. I think it's really, really important that we own what we can do.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think we both need to agree, whatever time Chris Wheatley messages us, we need to respond quickly.
I've thought about ringing him and seeing if he's got his random phone call voice on the 30th of June phone response.
Absolutely. So it has been truly wonderful in the last few years to see members of our bookkeeping community step up and take leadership roles. Alexi Boyd, a bookkeeper, has become CEO of COSBOA, the Council of Small Business Australia. Lilette Kalesia has joined the Australian Taxation Office BAS Agent Advisory Group, or BASAG. Deborah Anderson went on from being a bookkeeper to join the Tax Practitioners Board. And you, Cassandra, you are the director at the Australian Bookkeepers Association. So what I'd like to know is, what advice do you have, would you give to someone in the community who is interested in sort of stepping up and taking on a leadership role?
Yeah, do it. Fight hard, chew fast, basically. So I think as women, there's often this sense that we're not the best people to be doing this, or we don't have confidence in what we can do, and we suffer from imposter syndrome. And I'm going to stand here and put my hand up and say I've ticked all of those boxes, and I still tick all of those boxes every single day. But what I do is I step over it, for want of a better word, and go, well, hang on a sec, what can I do? I want to do this. You've got the angel on one shoulder saying this needs to change, or you can see these things that need to happen, and then you've got the devil on the other shoulder going, oh, you're not the person to be doing this. The thing is, if you want it resolved and fixed and you want to implement and influence change, the only way that you can do that is by being involved in influencing change. And the only way to do that is saying yes when these opportunities arise. So, I was fortunate a few years ago, about 3 years ago now, to be approached by AAT to sit on their board. And that was terrifying, because it's like, little old me, why would they want my knowledge? And, I admit I went into that in a very sort of meek way, but learnt so much from the people that I worked with. And then the opportunity came up to be one of the directors on the Australian Bookkeepers Association. And I jumped at the chance. I actually made some other decisions about other things that I wasn't going to do, because I did really want to be involved with this professional association, because they had been so supportive to me over the years, and it was my chance of giving back. So, there's some great opportunities out there. A lot of the professional associations are looking for people who would like to sit on stewardship groups or working groups with the ATO and the Tax Practitioners Board. If this is something you're interested in, reach out to your professional association and say, hey, I'd like to get involved, and this is my niche area of interest. Is there anything out there that you're looking to find a representative for? Because I can tell you that of all of the associations, the directors are the ones that are doing that, most regularly, and yet they need more people to be doing it. You don't have to be the director of a professional association to hold these roles. I think the ATO just recently advertised for some additional vacancies, and I think it was BASAG. Correct me if I'm wrong. So they're not. You don't have to be a member of a professional association. You have to be working in the industry and understand the industry. Apply for it. What's the worst they can do? They can say no, but they can actually also say yes. And it's a fabulous opportunity to see the inside workings of the world that is actually influencing us on a day-to-day basis. Do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really encouraged if people listening in to do it. And, the list of people I read out, 5 years ago, we were all sort of bookkeeper chums together. But they were all, everyone's been really, and there's a lot of people. That was just a few people I selected, and they've just gone on. I pinch myself that at the levels that people like you, Cassandra, have reached, and that what you're doing. But it very much is about finding your interest and pushing it forward, and speaking. So potentially ask questions in the Bookkeeper in Practice group. Ask questions of I used to be on the BAS Ag group, so I can answer questions about that. But you have so much knowledge about small business and about how bookkeeping works. And if you can sort of improve the industry and improve small business, the sort of the engine of Australia, that's a good thing to be doing.
Yeah, it's a great starting point. It's been really interesting. So, and opened up some fabulous opportunities as well. So,
absolutely. The BAS Ag group used to serve a really good chocolate cake.
That counts. So it's all done online now. So
I know.
They don't give you chocolate cake. Damn it. They should send you a Divi Pay card to go There's
and get
a
your
thought.
chocolate.
Have a chat to Trent and ask him to get onto the ATO about that. Yeah.
That's what I'll do. So, Cassandra, thank you so much for joining me and the Cloud Story listeners today. How can people get in contact with you?
Best way is to have a look at my website. So Laurus Bookkeeping, LAURUS bookkeeping.com.au. You can email me at bookkeepers@laurus.com.au. Hunt me down on my LinkedIn profile, or tap me on the shoulder in any of the, the bookkeeping social media groups that are around there. I'm generally in them. So they're probably the three main ways to get hold of me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cassandra. I really appreciate you taking the time off. We're actually recording this on the 30th of June.
Yes.
So happy EAFest to everyone out there who's in Australia listening to us. Really appreciate your time, your knowledge sharing, and your ongoing contribution to the community.
Thanks, Heather. It's been lovely to be involved. Appreciated.
I hope you enjoyed listening to that interview with Cassandra Scott, the Director at Laurus Bookkeeping. I found it fascinating hearing about the technology she uses in her practice, including the Xero Suite, Microsoft 365, the customer support software Freshdesk, and Expert, AI-driven audit and productivity tool that automates manual checks of your client files, surfacing errors, issues, and risks. The successful strategies Cassandra has adopted to introduce clients to new workflow methods and technology solutions, and the bookkeeping resources and support available, including the Bookkeeper in Practice Australia community on Facebook and the Australian Bookkeeping Association, among others. So you've been listening to the Cloud Stories podcast. I encourage you to subscribe and leave a 5-star review wherever you're listening so other people can find the podcast. I encourage you to stay up to date with the curated content I'm sharing by signing up to the Accounting Apps newsletter available at heathersmithau.com. And if you'd like to read about how I strategically partner with apps, you can read about that at endorsementdisclosure.com.